Welcome back. So in today's explainer, we're going to be taking a close look at what I can really only describe as an epic biographical hero's journey. But our protagonist isn't some historical conqueror or a famous inventor or a legendary explorer. Instead, our hero is something you probably interact with literally every single morning without giving it a second thought. We are going to trace the incredibly inspiring life story of the humble coffee bean. It's this wild journey full of patience, dramatic physical transformation, and even a little bit of fleeting romance, all playing out on these lush tropical hillsides. So let's dive right in. 2 billion. Just let that sink in for a second. That is the staggering number of cups of coffee we humans enjoy globally every single day. 2 billion. I mean, it's basically the fuel that powers the modern world. But what's absolutely fascinating here is that whether it's a tiny little espresso in Rome, a massive iced coffee in New York, or just that simple brewed mug sitting on your kitchen counter right now, every single one of those 2 billion cups begins its life story the exact same way. It all starts with a remarkably quiet, almost hidden process of nature. Okay, let's dive into this, because the very first thing we need to do is actually redefine our protagonist entirely. Despite the name we all use, the coffee bean isn't really a bean at all. It's a seed, and honestly, quite surprisingly, for those of us who only know it as a dry brown little nugget in a bag, the seed is found completely hidden inside a fleshy, bright red fruit that's known as a coffee cherry. So to really understand our hero's epic journey, we have to travel way back. Back to before it was a beverage, before it was roasted, and before it was even a fruit. We've got to start deep down in the dirt. Picture this, a single, pale seed just resting in dark, super rich tropical soil. This right here is the intimate, quiet beginning of the journey. Down in that warm earth, a really delicate white root starts to emerge right from the base of the seed. It pushes downward, anchoring itself into the soil to gather up nutrients, while at the exact same time, this brave little pale green shoot starts pushing upward, breaking right through the surface into that warm, diffused tropical light. This fragile shoot just keeps stretching taller and taller. And eventually, it unfurls its very first pair of small, dark, glossy leaves, taking what is essentially its very first true breath of the world. And this brilliantly illustrates that this is definitely not an overnight success story. It requires immense patience. Following those first few weeks where that root and shoot finally emerge, the glossy leaves unfurl over the course of months. And the young shrub just keeps growing, silently gathering energy. Its branches extend outward, thickening up with even more of that dark green foliage. But here's the wild part. It takes an astonishing 3 to 5 years of quiet, continuous growth before this young tree is finally ready to produce its very first fruit. Literally years of just gathering energy, all for this single milestone. But before that fruit actually arrives, the plant goes through this truly magical phase. I want you to ask yourself, what does a coffee flower actually smell like? If you haven't ever stood out there on a quiet green plantation hillside surrounded by these plants, you might naturally assume it smells like your morning roast, right? Something earthy, dark, maybe a bit robust. But nature actually has a completely different script prepared for this stage of the journey. The answer? It's jasmine. When the time is just right, these amazing clusters of small, white, star-shaped flowers just burst open along the branches in waves. Against all that dark green foliage, these bright white flowers completely fill the warm tropical air with this incredibly sweet, delicate scent that smells exactly like jasmine. And as they bloom, they release what looks like this faint, hazy mist of pollen into the air around them. It's this absolutely breathtaking, incredibly fragrant moment of romance for the plant. But it's also tragically fleeting, because each and every one of these beautiful flowers blooms for just one single day. Yeah, as quickly as it arrived, that brief bloom fades away. The white petals wither and just drift down to the earth beneath the shrub. But hey, this is not an ending at all. It's a completely vital transition. Right in the exact spot where those fragrant star-shaped flowers just sat, the real prize begins to form. Small, hard green cherries start emerging in these tight little clusters all along the branch, perfectly framed on either side by those protective glossy leaves. And through the soft morning haze and that bright afternoon sun, these tiny green fruits continuously swell, just growing larger and rounder day by day. Let's move to and see how this builds, because as the weeks pass, this absolutely beautiful, literal color-shifting transformation takes place. Ripening up under the warm golden hour light, these cherries don't just grow, they completely transform. They shift from that early, hard green, swelling into this soft, pale yellow, and then finally maturing into a deep, glossy, almost translucent red. And that deep red skin, that is the ultimate signal. It tells us that the years of growth, that magical single day of blooming, and the months of swelling have all finally reached their peak. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the ultimate plot twist in our hero's journey. 2. Hidden tightly inside every single one of those perfectly ripe, glossy red cherries are exactly 2 seeds. Just 2. And those 2 seeds are what we actually call the coffee bean. They've been totally protected and nurtured inside that sweet, fleshy fruit this entire time. And once that red cherry is finally picked and those 2 seeds are carefully extracted, nature's epic journey comes to an end. And our human journey of drying, roasting, grinding, and brewing finally begins. We so often take the simple things for granted. The 2 billion cups of coffee consumed today are the result of an incredible biological odyssey. Which really leaves us with this final thought. The next time you take a sip of your morning brew, will you taste the years of patient nature sitting right there in your cup? Will you think of that single seed pushing through the dark soil, the 3 to 5 years of quiet, steady growth, those star-shaped jasmine flowers that bloomed for just a single day, and the green cherries slowly turning a deep, glossy red under a tropical sun? I really hope this explainer has given you a whole new appreciation for your daily routine. Thanks so much for joining me. Keep looking for those amazing stories hidden in the everyday, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.